Good evening. It's my privilege to welcome you this evening to the study session for the Provo City School District Board of Education. We will begin this evening with a roll call. Nate, let's begin with you.
Nate Bryson, board member.
McKay Jensen, board member.
Rebecca Nielsen, board member.
Keith Retell, superintendent.
Jim Pedersen, board president.
Melanie Hall, board vice president.
Jennifer Partridge, board member.
Stephanie Bryant, business administrator.
And board member Julie Rash is joining us this evening via Zoom. We welcome her with us also. We welcome those of you who are here with us in our meeting. Also extend a warm welcome this evening. We will first begin with construction update.
So Stephanie, we've recently reassigned oversight of construction and Mark Wheeler to Stephanie. Stephanie will be giving this report.
And I'm choosing to be up here because hopefully this mic works better for us than my mic does. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little quiet. It doesn't hear. We don't.
Okay, maybe this will help.
It doesn't sound like it's on.
Okay. Okay, so as Keith said, Mark.
I can mute the whole. Okay.
There, now it is. Okay. Mark's been shifted over to be under me for now anyways. See how it goes. So I met with Mark today so he could give me an update on how projects are going. I'll just give you a brief summary of some of those projects. First and foremost, we want to give a great big thank you and recognition to both the custodial and the maintenance teams here at the district. They've been working, as you know, nonstop trying to keep our schools clean, disinfected. Anytime we have a small outbreak in a school or an office or a building, they're out there as fast as they can be to get things disinfected and cleaned up. And the maintenance crews have been filling in to help the custodial crews where they can, in addition to doing their normal jobs. So just a shout out to those two teams and all their hard work that they've been putting in. Start off, Franklin Elementary has a newly installed playground equipment system. The old one was just getting old and damaged due to age, so that was a new thing for Franklin. I think I saw Jill here. No, I didn't see Jill here. I don't know why I thought I saw Jill here. The tip view build is continuing, as you know. They're working on the south gym. The south gym has a roof structure in place now. The academic wing, the design of the academic wing is being finalized. We are working with the local police department on some of our security needs for that area. So that's still getting finalized and done. We'll be going out to bid hopefully in May for the main academic wing of Timpview High School. Otherwise, not a lot of new to report at Timpview. The new portable classrooms at Westridge, Sunset View, Centennial, and Timpview continue progress, and teachers will be able to shift into those new portables during the Christmas break. Centennial Middle School has an HVAC project. It's about $500,000 to improve their mechanical systems. That's about 99% complete, so facilities is getting ready to wrap that up. We've been doing some hardware and door replacements out in the schools, as you know. We're on the last stretch of those. Jay Schaefer's been working hard to get those finalized. COPS grant helped a lot with those, by the way, so kudos to those that have all the work with COPS grant and getting us those funds. One thing of particular interest is probably the Sunset View Elementary City Sidewalks. Mark has started requesting from the city once again some help with those sidewalks on 600 South to help with the increased safety. I know that was a topic at the joint city council meeting, so Mark's working through the city with that. We'll see how it goes. I know he's worked in the past to try to get those, and for various reasons the city has other needs and budgets and hasn't had the ability to do those, but he's working on that once more. We've also put in some commercial capacity air purifiers.
I know he's worked in the past to try to get those.
Wow.
For various reasons, the city has other needs and budget.
I'll text her.
I'm pretty good at throwing my voice. Okay, commercial air capacity air purifiers. We've been putting some of those out. They're standalones. We've been putting some of those out in the choir, band, and orchestra rooms at all the secondary schools. Due to the nature of those classrooms, we felt like we needed some extra air filtration in those classrooms. That's been in response to COVID. It's been about a $40,000 project based on the need and the use of those classrooms. And one last small item, the ongoing energy program. We obviously saved a little bit of energy when we had the shutdown and the dismissal, but even given that, now that we're back in, we're running those systems a little bit harder. We're trying to circulate the air more often. Even with that extra circulation, we are still saving some funds because of the energy program. We're down about 22% from last year on electricity, and we are down about 30% on gas. So even with these extra needs that we have, we are finding some savings. Again, albeit we had no school for a few months, but it's been helping out. Those are the main things that are being worked on out in the facilities area that we thought would be of interest to the board. Any questions? And I'll answer them the best of my ability. If I can't, I will get the answers from Mark.
You said at the beginning that we're going to go out for bid on the second part of the construction for Timpview.
Right.
I guess this is just a question. I'm not very knowledgeable in this area, but is that normal to not have the same company do like the South Gym portion and the academic wing portion? Is it not one project?
So I'll clarify that. The Westland Construction is going to do the construction as the general manager. So we already bid the construction management portion of that, and that was awarded to Westland. Westland will now go out to bid on the actual construction. So they'll go out and bid with subs for engineering and mortar work and plumbing and all those various things that go into it. So those bids that we're doing now will be Westland going out and getting the bids for the actual cost of the building.
Thank you. That makes
Yep,
so much more
thanks for
sense.
that.
Thank you.
It was a good clarification.
Go
ahead.
This question is probably a little bit premature, but do we have any indication if those bids are likely to come in lower or higher? I know the gym came in a little bit lower.
Yeah, right now what we're hearing is we expect to be fully within budget. Reminder that the $80 million budget is construction as well as soft costs. So that $80 million includes our architect fees, our impact fees, our furniture and fixtures, et cetera. So, but they're feeling pretty comfortable about definitely staying within budget, and they're hopeful that maybe they'll find us just a little bit of room. You know, we're not going to bid for a few more months while things are finalized. Things could change, but they're pretty confident that we'll stay within budget if nothing else. So that's the good news.
That's good.
Yeah, another good question.
So my question, you may not have the answer to this. So somebody asked me about the South Gym and if it's going to stay the color it is currently or if it's going to be painted or.
I will find that out.
So.
Are they talking interior or exterior?
The exterior. Because right now it looks like the patterns, it's like they put the cinder block in a strategic pattern.
I'll check on that.
So
I'll
I was
ask
just
Mark and
curious.
get that answer for you.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, that's your construction report. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, we'll move on to our next agenda item. Superintendent Retell, policy review.
So the board will remember while Dr. Doug Finch is coming up, Dr. Finch is the Assistant Superintendent over Student Services. The board will remember we had a conversation about this at the retreat back in September. This is a policy to bring us into compliance with state code and state requirements. And so Doug will give us a little bit of a background and then we'll proceed.
Thank you, Superintendent. As was mentioned, we met September 25th. We spent a considerable amount of time. Members of my department from Student Services gave you some context around why we wanted to look at some of the things that felt like, as Superintendent mentioned, we needed to do to be in compliance with some of the federal mandates that are part of things such as the Educational Amendment of 1972, Title IX, as well as the Civil Rights Acts of 1964 associated with Title VII. Specifically, we wanted to get on our books something that is aligned with what are the federal and state expectations for having firmly a non-discriminatory policy in place for this school district. And one of the areas we felt like we still had maybe a lack or a gap in some of the clarification of how we would proceduralize some of our work was in the area of gender inclusion. So we had that conversation again on the 25th of September. was very, very helpful to have gotten your feedback at the time, answered a lot of your questions. And so with the assistance of my team, who've really thoughtfully referenced this document, if you've got it in front of you, you can see that we cross-reference a number of different district policies associated with student conduct in particular. But also we are careful to note, and Nate, you pointed this out in the study session, our need to align with UHSAA guidelines as it relates to things associated with participation and those sorts of things as it might play itself out with transgender participation and so forth. There's also a number of legal references you can see as you continue on that identifies the number of state code things are in place, and we use a lot of their language in developing this policy, which is always very helpful when you can go to state code and essentially utilize that same language in developing what you do as a school district. We also reference, of course, FERPA and the protections that are in place there, because there'll be things such as forthcoming things such as preferred name change type things that would be things how we handle that in terms of our records. So FERPA is also another thing that comes into play. So again, I won't necessarily read through the document, but it's been well thought through and crafted. We've worked on this as executive council. The superintendent particularly gave me a hand on trying to put this in a format that he felt would be complementary to the kind of work we do as a school district in terms of its format. So we have before you policy 3300, which is again intended to say that we as a school district recognize the need to have an inclusive and accepting, respectful school and work environment, and therefore we call out those different policies and statutes that we will defer to as we develop policies, procedures, and protocols for which we'd give direction to our schools of how to implement this. Notice that the last line also calls out for us to also build employee awareness, and we can certainly will work on creating that sort of gender inclusive, safe environment for our students and for our staff members as it relates to everything in the content here. Accompanying that is also a procedure that we feel like is very helpful as far as a first procedure under this policy that lists the key definitions and terms for individuals who would work on this kind of thing. Again, this is all language taken right from the state's documents as it relates to state code and their definitions. You can see also it calls out the Anti-Discriminatory Act of Title 34, and again cites that along with other types of things that will guide the development of things such as the concerns that will be forthcoming procedurally around things such as harassment, physical education, so of our course selection, confidentiality of student records, things associated with dress codes, use of pronouns, all those sorts of things. They're not necessarily outlined in these procedures and policy today, but we're setting the framework essentially that we can begin that work to begin to flesh this out so that it gives good direction to our staff of how to handle this both legally and appropriately. Just as a point, I think that I appreciate, and I know I represent a number of individuals in our family engagement committees that have worked on this with us. They sincerely appreciate how big of a moment this is for them to feel like they're seen and they're valued and they're appreciated as members of our school community. And that goes a long way as far as the school district who would say we want to formalize these protections by stating them here locally, that the Provo City School District stands for this kind of inclusive and safe environment, which I know is one of your focuses this year, is to be an inclusive and welcoming school district. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions or clarification anyone saw that it would be in addition to what we, again, follow up from what we talked about in September that I can help you with today.
Doug, let me just add two things, please. One is Doug has done a lot of work on this with one of our attorneys that we work with on a regular basis, and this has been cleared and endorsed from that source. And the other thing I wanted to point out for those in the room who may not be familiar with the policy approval process, in this district we run policies and procedures. The board approves the policies. The procedures are essentially how we will implement it. The board is not involved in the management of the district. The board is involved in setting the direction for the district, and that's the purpose of the policy approval. Procedure approvals are done at the council level, and that will be done not until the board approves the associated policy.
Thank you, Superintendent. And just again of note, we included this procedure because it was just so great at beginning to clarify contextually some of the definitions and key terms and context around. We'd begin to work to develop additional procedures and forms associated with implementation. I'll take some questions now. Jennifer?
Yeah, well, I was glad to hear when you mentioned that you've involved the Family Engagement Committee with this, so thank you for doing that. I just wanted to ask, because I assume I know the answer, but I want to make sure, does this, having this formal policy, does this change anything from what we've already been doing?
It probably doesn't change things, but it probably sets us up to give better direction and structure. The things that we kind of prescribe to as far as the reasons why we're doing it are already state and federal code that's in place. So we're not writing something different that shouldn't have been guidelines we already follow. We want to provide the enumeration of the details of how we'll implement it here at Provo. In other words, there's a standard there about non-discrimination, but then how would we deal with cases when discrimination is either perceived or maybe some things we can do in advance, frankly, to mitigate some potential risk that's associated with that. So I can see this being something that a school leader or someone in my office or a teacher would utilize to make sure that their classroom is safe by these standards, in other words, or that our policies or our curriculum and so forth is in compliance with these standards. And we just haven't had that kind of right down to the classroom and to the interaction level, those kinds of specific things of what to do and how to request and get support if you think that we're out of compliance with this, that it just makes it a lot easier for us to begin to actionalize what it is that we should be doing already.
Okay,
thank you, Jennifer. Other questions?
I just want to thank you for all the effort you guys went through, because, you know, this was difficult. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Nate. And again, for someone with your background, you can understand that there's a lot of things that are within, you know, legal statute to make sure that we're checking all those dots. And your feedback in our previous meeting has realized the idea of not going out on a limb and trying to define things that aren't already defined by our organizations that we tether into, like UHSA and so forth, was very helpful. Thank you.
I just want to second Nate and say thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Doug. Again. Like I said, I can't extend to you the appreciation. There might be individuals who come to comment in open session tonight because they just, again, really value the relationship that they feel like they have with this school district to know that this is a place that wants to be inclusionary of all students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, we'll be pleased to hear from Jason Cox, Deputy Superintendent. He will report on the 2022-2023 calendar survey results.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss with you the 2022-2023 calendar. We've this year again followed our practice where we send out a survey and ask people about their preferences of the lengths of leave and when they are scheduled throughout the year. We got that feedback back in a timely manner, and we were following our regular schedule. I did want to update the board that typically we bring to you the results of the AB calendar survey at this point to allow you to see how that was voted on. At the point of us completing the first survey, we ran into some issues with COVID. We had the person who creates the survey be out for a period of time. We had other members who were involved in that get impacted and not able to help us complete the survey. And so I wanted to give you an update tonight. We had planned to have it ready for you this evening, but we are actually holding now because we're so close to the holiday, not wanting to send out a survey right before the holiday. But we'll be doing that early in January and then being able to bring the calendar to you with the results from the survey of the people who have voted for the different schedules, the different holiday breaks and days off that would be allowable during that year's calendar. Any questions on that?
Any questions from the board? Thank you for that update, Jason, letting us know that we can look forward to that information in January and the impacts of COVID on your office. Thank you.
You bet. One question. In the two options, is there a clear leaning, or is it sort of just a couple days here and there, or what?
Yeah, there's not a lot of difference. I want to say that there was about 5 days difference in the start date. One of them was around the 18th of August. The second one was around the 22nd, I believe, of August, or 23rd. So that was one of the biggest differences. Start and end dates were really the largest differences in the two options. The Christmas break is the same. The spring break is the same. They all align. It's more just start and end dates.
Great.
Both end before Memorial Day, and you know, it just depended on what day of the week before Memorial Day that it ended. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We will now move on to item F, budget requests and adjustments. Stephanie?
Okay, sorry, my computer shut down right when you called on me. Okay, as you know, budget requests that are above 50,000 need to come to the board. This year, usually we have a chunk of them in October, which we did because we're wrapping up some grants and whatnot. This year we've had some extra monies coming in and things getting finalized late, partially due to COVID. Some of the money is COVID money, some of it's just things don't get wrapped up as quickly as Jason just experienced. So we do have another 9 budget requests that are in front of you tonight. Most of them are just adding new grants or finalizing grants that we know we have and we didn't quite have the numbers for yet. So we've got some finalization on the trust lands to give back some money that wasn't used. We have a new state grant for EL software, Carl Perkins, oral translation funding, gang prevention grants, some K-12 hotspots. That was part of the CARES flow through. Finalizing the CARES Act funding that we have received and shifting some of the funding from FY20 to 21. And then aligning our last Title I granting. So nothing out of the ordinary. The revenues and the expenditures should match up on most of those grants. Most of them are net zero to the budget. There is language in the business for the approval.
So my only question is, with these grants, are these all yearly grants or are these ongoing?
Most of them are ongoing. The oral translation's a new one. I assume that maybe they'll have it ongoing in the future. Carl Perkins is part of our CTE. We have that every year. Gang prevention, we've had that for several years, although it did drop off a little bit. Obviously the CARES funding is new and probably won't be ongoing. And then the Title 1A grant funding that's an ongoing funding as well. So most of it's ongoing with the exception of the CARES funding.
I have a question about the trust lands. So was that money that the state told us we were getting a certain amount and then they came back to us that it's different?
Yeah,
and how does that affect the schools who already were planning on certain
So
amount?
I believe the largest portion of that is eSchool. eSchool has been getting quite a bit in trust lands funding because of the number of kids that we had before we made this last change. And they were having trouble finding ways to use it. Okay. And so, you know, when we don't use it within a certain period of time, they're going to ask us to refund it. So
it's money that wasn't used anyway. It's not affecting our schools
Correct.
who are planning to
Correct.
use them. Okay.
Yep. It would have been last year's money probably. And then Jim, do you want me to just go on with the next two because they're large
Yes,
purchase
why don't
requests?
you go ahead and take care of G and H, and if you need, we could also have Chad and Michelle with any other questions that may come up.
So this first large purchase request, again, anything over 50,000 that was not in the approved budget needs to come in front of the board, is for Chromebooks. And this was, Chad, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this was to put in an additional $82,000 of Chromebooks with our digital learning money. We had budgeted in the approved budget for, I think, 350? 400. And this is adding on another 82 because of needs. And Chad can probably answer any questions beyond that. I'll let you see if Chad has questions first.
Board, any questions for Chad?
I do. Is this a typical, is this a typical amount that we would be getting, or is this due to the amount of use that we're getting with the Chromebooks this year?
You know, it's been pretty close, but this money is the state's digital teaching and learning grant money, and we anticipated about 400, but got more than we anticipated. That's why we're asking for the additional 80. So we did the 400 already. We're just asking to spend more, the rest of it. And this money, we asked the state and said, hey, we're going to spend this on Chromebooks, so that's what we need to spend it on. So, but I mean, quite a bit of money. It's cool. Hopefully that grant, like some of these others, continues, because that's been a beneficial to us big time. So.
So our notes say that we're ordering them now because it takes a while to get here and we don't need them quite yet. Is this just to cycle through some at the change of school year, or when do you plan to use the new ones?
We'll implement them this year. The problem is right now they're telling us our lead times could be anywhere up to 6 months. So like what we're trying to do is get things ordered now. Some of these we may wait till later, but in order to get them in this fiscal year, which we have to do for the grant, we've got to order them now just to make sure we get them here in time.
But they'll be
But we will
for next
implement it.
school
We will
year,
put them
probably.
out this year, for sure. So. Questions?
Who's winning the Chromebook wars? Who's your manufacturer that you're buying the most?
Mostly Lenovo. They're the ones that have been
Both
winning
still?
most of them. Well, and the Lenovo's we buy they're ruggedized, so they're a little more heavy duty than some of the other ones. They take a little more abuse, which.
And still the touchscreen for, do we do that still?
Yep.
Great.
And our repair guy's sitting right here, so I mean he's the one that does a lot to make those machines and keep
And what
those
are they
things
running
going.
per unit right now?
About 300. I mean, I think they're about 280 actually, but then we have the Chromebook management
Right,
license that we got on
management,
top of it.
so
Yeah, so it's about 300.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Chad?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
Thanks, Chad. Okay, the other large purchase, Michelle Aldridge is here to help us with this one if we have questions. It is for the English language learner software. The state has
I'll introduce it.
has allocated some funds out to school districts for English learner language software. Did I get that right, Michelle? That's a tongue twister. And this is to use those funds. Again, it is over 50,000. You'll see a pretty good description that she typed up for us in your board docs. They're considering buying Rosetta Stone for about 110,000. We do have a sole source on that, and in addition to that, the state had also vetted Rosetta as part of one of their 3 vendors as well. So if you have more questions about the program or the use of that software, I'll let Michelle talk to those.
Board, any questions for Michelle?
I would love to hear how the software is implemented, along with like how much training the instructors need, and how we're using this to help our students.
So this is part of our whole complete EL curriculum for all of the schools. The nice thing about this package is it's actually K-12, which is the only curriculum in our district that spans that much of a grade level. It is split into secondary and elementary. We have an implementation plan that goes along with all of our curriculum supports for all of our schools. Every school has an EL supervisor that directs curriculum implementation at every school. I supervise those people at a monthly training. So with this purchase actually comes a $5,000 professional development package. So we'll be working with Rosetta Stone on implementation of that. A little more background on this if you're interested. For years the state has mandated a software given a software that we haven't chosen at the district level. They've used Imagine Learning in the past. That's been the vendor that's just assigned to everyone who wanted to use it. This is the first year LEAs get to choose the software. So Imagine Learning is one of those, and we will use a portion of those licenses as well. And to clarify, Melanie, you asked a question about ongoing funding that Stephanie referred to. The Oral Language Translation Grant is another grant that I wrote from our office, and that is not ongoing. That is a one-time only. I anticipate being able to write for it again, but it was a request I made from our department special to the USB to help with school translation.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. And thank you, Stephanie. Who's going to do the next item from there? We will now hear from Anne Marie, and she will be addressing the state required sex education committee membership review.
Good evening, board. State code requires that every year the board approve for each district or LEA the membership of the committee that is to review sex education curriculum. In our district, we have very thoroughly adopted a standardized curriculum that we've used over time, but this committee continues to meet twice a year for updating, they need to review some information from our district, our area, including teen pregnancy rates and things like that. So you have before you a list of people. We followed the protocol that you established in the past in asking school principals to go to their school community councils to submit participants. We need to have more parent members than district members. So you see before you the spots that the state asks to have on that committee with the parent members that each school in the review cycle has submitted. I'll also add, Melanie, you've been on our committee in the past, and we'd be happy to have you continue to join on, or another member if you'd like.
I'm happy to do it again if there's somebody else that really wants to do it.
It's one of the easiest
I will be
gigs.
happy to take it on again.
Only 2 meetings a year. Okay. Thanks, Melanie.
Can I make a question?
Yes,
questions I can
additional
answer?
questions, Board Member Nielsen?
There's just a couple schools that don't have anyone listed, and I was just curious about that.
And those principals indicated they were unable to get a volunteer to do so.
So does that make the committee deficient at all, or is it okay to not have a couple
No,
like that? Okay.
The state code requires that an administrator, teachers, school nurse, we have enough of the categories fulfilled on our end, and we just need to have more parents than that. So the size of the committee isn't stated in legislation on how large it needs to be.
If there was a school that there was more than one parent that really, really wanted to be part of this, could they?
You're the board. Yeah, I mean, we have in many cases those parents represent more than one school. They could represent an elementary school or a high school depending on where their students are. So I think if you're interested in that, if the board's interested in that, we just need to go through this process, either adding them now or talking with the principal and then coming back and adding them to the committee. Anything else I can help with?
Hey, thank you, Anne Marie.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, anyway, good. Item J, this is kind of an open discussion. For the last year, we have been working on a revision of the board handbook and have had Keith and his administrative team taking a look at how their responsibilities interact and dovetail with the responsibilities of the board. Superintendent, anything that you have that you would like to update us with before we move on with further discussion?
I believe it was 2012 when former board member Stephen Staples wrote the original board handbook, and that was adopted and put into place by the previous board at that particular time. In talking this over with the board leadership and other members of the board, it was generally felt that it was time to get this updated, mainly to reflect more what we're doing now as a matter of practices in several areas. So this is now turned into a 30 to 40 page book, depending on editing, and it has a number of things regarding norms and what does a board meeting look like, what do board member reports look like, what the different roles are of the individuals who are sitting along the tables over there, and all those kinds of things to help board members have at the ready, just kind of a ready reference of different things that go on in the district. And so this has taken a while. It's a little later than I wanted, but it looks like we are potentially meeting the goal of having this thing done and in by the end of the calendar year. So thank you to Bonnie for helping with formatting on that, for board members for their input, for Jim and Melanie for their leadership in answering questions and helping this thing move forward.
Thank you, Superintendent. I know we are looking forward in the spring retreat, and in January, I believe actually, isn't it? In January or February, looking towards some type of formal action on the revisions to the board handbook. Are there any initial observations or comments that anyone would like to make regarding the board handbook?
We actually do have it on for approval tonight in the business meeting, but sorry to jump in.
Jennifer?
Well, I was just going to thank you for all your hard work on this. As a 2-year member of the board, I freshly remember how much there is to learn when you first get started, and I think this is going to be very helpful for our new board members. And I was going to say before you said we were going to approve it tonight that I think it's in good enough condition to share with our incoming board members and get their feedback, and then maybe they can help us see if there's anything that they still have questions about that we can refine.
Nate?
The formatting's way better than the last one. So, nice job.
It would have had to have been.
I was actually going to give the same comment. It is a huge upgrade from the last one that I read. So this is fabulous and should be very, very helpful to anyone who has any questions about what the board does or for incoming board members. And it's something I really wish we would have had when I came on. So this is a great thing.
I would like to give a big thank you to everyone who is engaged in the process. You know, preparing a handbook of this nature is not easy, and particularly when you're dealing with dynamic situations that are always changing. And so, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Melanie?
McKay, maybe you can answer this. Do other boards have a handbook like this?
Yes, it's a practice. It's encouraged by USBA. It's probably where Stephen got the idea. He probably went to a conference. I don't know if I should be, in the handbook, it lists the USBA conference as frustrating. I am the president of USBA. That might not help me, but there are several that do have a board handbook, and some are quite extensive. I think that we should be commended that this is straightforward and provides really relevant facts, specific to levies and specific assignments is really good.
Thank you. Of course, remember we view this as a living document so that there will be updates that will be made regularly as needed. Excuse me, Jennifer, thank you for your comment about new board members and having the opportunity to take a look at this and having this provided for training. I promise it's not COVID, it's the feather that's in the bottom of my throat, so.
I can scoot.
Let's move on to our COVID update, and Superintendent, will begin with you, and then as you would like to invite from your administrative council to comment.
I think anyone who will come up on this one from the safety committee will be coming up to answer questions from the board if you have any. Essentially, this is just a standing item. We promised way back when that this would be a regular item on board meetings. As you know, there are a number of things that are going on. Safety committee continues to meet every day, and we review all of the data that we collect through the school nurses. By the way, the school nurses are not school employees. They are Utah County Health Department employees. They're the ones who coordinate with us. And we follow their lead, and we have Utah County Health Department representation on leadership representation on most, if not all, meetings. Melanie is our board member who's on that committee. We deal with a lot of things. We deal with a lot of challenges. One thing that we decided today was that we would like to start, probably will start in the new year because I don't think that we're going to be able to get it done in the next week and a half, but we're going to try to start surveying with teachers, and I know Melanie would like to survey parents as well. But we would like to survey our employees just to find out some specific targeted things, and we want to ask that question maybe every 2-3 weeks just to track how we're doing in terms of providing support and answering questions and those kinds of things. This is an unprecedented time. I know there are people who are happy with us, and I know there are people that are unhappy with us. And all I have to say is there is no manual. There is no manual. There is no course that I took in university to tell you how to survive a pandemic. And I know the board has had all kinds of opportunities for training, but I haven't seen any sessions on this either. So we're trying to use our best judgment and our intelligence and try to move forward and get feedback. And the challenge, of course, is that, as we've seen before, any decision comes with people who are in favor of it and people who are opposed to it. And both can tend to be very emphatic, very passionate about those. So I know the board may have questions about the move to phase 2, back to phase 2 at the high school level, which began yesterday. There may be some other questions the board may have, but we're here to answer those questions. Jason Garrison, back in the corner there, leads our safety committee, and he's also in the room to be able to answer questions if needed. So, board, the time is yours.
And I think what I'll do is I will invite Melanie, who is our board member that sits on the committee, and would ask her to go ahead and lead out. And maybe just before you start, Melanie, to reiterate just a little bit what the superintendent said. You know, we're dealing with a very dynamic situation that changes, I think, sometimes almost hourly and certainly daily. And as we seek to move forward in determining the best course of action to take, I would just want to reassure the public, our employees, our students, that we are anxious to get back to daily class activity as soon as we can do so safely. And that health and safety are priorities and are paramount, but not lost in that discussion also is having good quality instruction and achievement. And with that, Melanie?
Okay, I'm just going to do a few little updates of what we've been talking about in the safety committee meeting. Extracurricular testing started yesterday at 6 a.m., is that correct? And they did some after school as well, because there were some programs that were taking place early in the morning, but they were able to get through just under 200 students and have those rapid tests done. There was only a few that the test didn't work, which is a normal thing to look for, so they just redid those students. But the good news was that we had one positive from all of those. And what was nice was, I think, HR, Jason, HR was there to watch it, so that this might be something they can implement for staff in the future, something like that.
Melanie, if I can interrupt, we did purchase, how many? 2,000? 2,000 rapid tests for us to administer ourselves. Some districts are doing this, some are not. We'll start that probably after the break, because we have to get them in and we have to learn how to use them properly. But these are going to be offered for non-symptomatic employees, just as reassurance for them. And if they are symptomatic, we want them to go to a health agency, but this will be something that will be available at least for maybe a round or two. 2,000 cost us around $40,000 plus, so coming up with that money to be able to provide this on a larger scale will be a challenge. But anyway, thank you for letting me interrupt on that, Melanie.
No, thank you for the update on that. We're watching the numbers closely at the high schools. They're teetering, but we're watching them closely. And Keith, on this next one that I'm going to talk about, maybe you can help talk about it, but there's possible updates on the state COVID manual that could be coming up that could help with quarantine levels. That could possibly happen this week, is that correct?
That's my understanding, that it is possible this week, a new announcement from the governor.
And then we brought up in the safety committee meeting the possibility of getting more face time for students. And so two options that we threw in front of the safety committee was to extend the school day Monday through Thursday to regular scheduled time, and then on Fridays to have that off, not necessarily off, but no teaching during that time. And it would be a teacher work day. The other was to go through Monday through Friday for the shortened period. There's definitely a lot of pros and cons to both. Regardless of the choice, this will affect teacher workload. So I just want to open this up to questions and comments. Everyone here in the room can answer questions if you guys have some. So.
Okay, board questions? Jennifer?
I think I'll start. Well, I think when I started asking a couple weeks ago if we might be ready, or when would we be ready to do one of these options that Melanie just mentioned, for me, it's what can we do to increase the time face-to-face with students, to improve academic time, But how can we also improve the system that we have right now to alleviate the stress and the burden on the teachers? I feel if we're going to do either of those options, if that adds stress and burden, then it's not the right thing to do. And so things we can look at are the schedule. I think we need to look at home study, and I also would like some questions answered about the cameras that we bought and how can we utilize those to maybe ease some of that burden on the teachers. So I don't know if someone else wants to go or if you want me to ask some more specific questions, but those are my beginning thoughts.
I want to hear about the cameras too, so is there somebody who wants to talk about that?
Emery, do you have that information?
So we purchased, I can't remember if it's 250 or 300 of those Hudley cameras. They're built for conferencing so that it focuses on the speaker and their projection. It tracks the presenter. We have initially placed those via professional development coordinators in the schools. Each school has one or two of those coordinators. And every school principal has asked for some. There is, I think, a bit of a natural, as I've heard, fear among some teachers about having their every move videotaped and sent out. In speaking with, there's a district to the north of us who uses this in all of their secondary schools with some great success. But when I talked to their director up there about it, she said that was typical when they started. Once teachers really saw how it was delivering instruction to students in a relatively easy way, the teacher's the best at it. So to not have to try and put it on a platform or find a video or make a video, really just putting them in the classroom, that teachers embrace them more and more. So right now, I just texted as we were asking this question, how many have we placed thus far? I can't answer that, but maybe I can find that information tonight. But I think we're on our way to having many people utilize those in their classrooms. I think there's a bigger question to me about home study. There are students in home study for many reasons, and some teachers, I think, are fearful that if they're not. So we have students who have selected essentially home study. We have students who do it for a week because they have the sniffles. We have students who have to do it for 2 weeks because their family needs to quarantine due to a family member. So there are these lengths of time, and teachers have been dealing with these in many cases in different ways. So I think the encouragement by the board, the encouragement by principals to utilize this as one tool for reaching those students who are at home would be a great thing. We introduce them as really a resource, not a force, but hey, here's a great, easy way, instead of preparing a lot of extra things and extra time, this might be a really easy way to record what your instruction is so students at home can do it. But I think that it needs some more nurturing and some more suggesting and a bit of pushing to get nearly all of them in use.
How user-friendly is it for the teachers? Because they already have to do a lot with technology, and they're using their computers for other things. So how much do they have to do to get the cameras to go?
It's quite easy. It plugs into a USB port. You wear a tracker, it tracks you. It's really very easy. It's minimal setup, minimal management. You turn it on and off on your device. You can be projecting from your computer. It doesn't require, that to be done at all. It's got the mic with the tracking mechanism so that it follows the instructor. So all of those things shouldn't be big issues. It downloads pretty easily. It can be embedded in Canvas quite easily. You can imagine that this year teachers have learned lots of new things, from the Canvas demands to all of our online programs. So while sometimes we think, oh, just one more thing, just learn this one more thing, doesn't seem like much, but some feel, oh my gosh, I just can't learn one new thing. But again, once that curve is jumped, then we see a lot more participation.
So do the home students watch live, or it's just to download for later, or both?
Either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Board Member Rash would like to make a comment. Julie, go ahead and unmute your microphone. We're ready. Would like to make a comment. Julie?
I think a couple of things. Can you guys
Unmute your microphone. We can hear you, Julie.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can you guys not hear me?
We can hear you.
There's a delay.
On a delay.
Is there
There's a big
Okay,
delay. So she's going to hear that in about a minute.
a minute?
Never.
Go ahead.
Julie, go ahead.
Can-
I'm telling her she's going to.
Put in the chat that we can hear.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to say a couple of things. One, in response to Anne-Marie saying that, you know, teachers are a little nervous about the videotape. I've got some sympathy with that. I think we can all kind of understand that. It is tough. I know that lots of people, myself included, have had to kind of go to a video format for a lot of the work we're doing. Yeah, it's difficult. So I can sympathize with that, but also to support what Anne-Marie said, I think once they start doing it, it will be manageable. It'll be okay, and it's something that people can get used to. So I'm hopeful that, you know, we've invested in all these cameras that we can make that happen. Also, I think that I think really the home study here is the big hang up for so many teachers. As I've talked to them and solicited feedback, that is what comes back every time. It's just so much. I think teachers are far less concerned about extended FaceTime, except they're trying to balance the FaceTime with the home study. And we have such a relatively small number of students on home study, it kind of feels like the vast majority of teachers and students are kind of having to take a back seat to that. So I think we need to have a pretty healthy discussion about home study in all of this. I will mute again.
Thank you, Julie.
Can I add to that as well? I've tried to do some homework this week and talk to principals and teachers at my schools. And I agree that one of the biggest concerns I keep getting back from people is just the load. And I apologize, not people, from teachers. The load is just too great. I talked to one teacher in particular at Provo High who gave me her number. She's got 196 students. And when you have a significant portion of those students on home study, and when I say home study, there are some who are legitimately on home study, but there are a lot who are just missing school. And it's unclear why those kids are missing school. Some are legitimately on quarantine, but others are just missing school. And I feel like the home study option is being used frankly as an excuse to not have to go to school for various reasons. But I'm concerned about that as well. I know, like I said, there's a lot who are using it well. But on this particular teacher that I talked to, she says she has one home study rock star who's killing it and doing everything they're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, the rest of them, she feels like she is having to carry the burden of them not coming to school. And I find that interesting because typically when in a non-COVID year, if a child misses school, it is their responsibility to come to the teachers, to find out what they missed, to find out what they need to make up, and it's their responsibility to gather the information and get it done. I feel like the home study option that we've given people has reversed that responsibility and put that pressure now on the teachers to make sure those kids know what the work is and to make sure those kids know what the assignments are and what they missed. So we've kind of almost reversed that responsibility there. And it's too great for the teachers. There's definitely some responsibility always with that teacher, but I feel like the students are being left so much more unaccountable than they have been in the past. And I recognize the circumstances are different, and we have to be more lenient because there are people who are legitimately out. But I don't know if I'm going to get reamed for saying this or not, but I feel like it's being abused. The home study system is being abused. Anyways, I got the same feedback from mostly, I'm going to also say this too, secondary teachers. Our elementary teachers, that at least in my two schools, don't feel as much of a home study burden because their class loads are just smaller. We're talking 25 students, and that's a way more manageable load than 200 students. So I'm hearing a little bit more of that from secondary rather than elementary. But same thing. I just want to echo the same thing. That's what it keeps coming back to. There's lots and lots of concerns I've heard, but everyone has mentioned home study. So I'm very open to talking about that as well. I feel like we need to make some adjustments. I don't know if that's just expectations or policy or what, but if we really do want to get more face time with the kids and the teachers, then something has to give somewhere else. So
yeah, we started
that's
the
my 2
year,
cents.
as you'll recall, believing and telling teachers that we're primarily digital teachers, online teachers, and asking them to convert their instruction to that. And again, whether the students are at home or in the school, they can use many of those tools and setups. But I think you're right. I think I'm hearing the same thing you are. Universally, it's difficult for our secondary teachers. Utah has a far higher student load than most states. So just having to differentiate even further there is certainly problematic. I tend to see on an elementary level the concern when the teacher has more than 1 or 2 home study students. If a teacher has 17 who typically come and then 8 who are in and out, 4 never come, 4 come here and there, I think we have to keep in mind that we are asking people to stay home if they're sick, COVID or not. So there's more staying home just to be safe, and I want to encourage that. But I think that teachers, from what I am hearing, are the same thing. They would ask, they would prefer that students who are going to choose to do their work or must do their work mostly from home would be overseen by someone else, that we do some differentiation, and that's something, we could talk about organizing on a school level, maybe redistributing duties, or, I think there are different ways to look at this question, but undoubtedly that's one of the biggest concern I'm hearing is managing this. And I will also say this is the Matthew principle is in effect here. Those who are rich are getting richer. There's a summer reading loss that we know occurs every year, and oddly, students who come from middle to higher income family homes, which have more stability, tend to actually make gains over the summer. So we are seeing our this is like an elongated summer. We're seeing our students who come from with less stability, whether that's lower income, maybe transient families, maybe less family supports. And I think that's another reason we're seeing some of those students less at school, because they may be tending younger brothers and sisters, they may be working, having jobs to support the family, they may, in times like this, if you're a have-not, you have even less. And I'm really fearful for that community of students who is feeling more of the brunt of this than typical students.
Nate, I think you had a comment, and then McKay.
I kind of want to just concur with everything Rebecca said. I mean, all the people I've talked to, all the teachers I've talked to, I don't think that they can do either of those two options while we still haven't solved the home study issue. And I think we need to solve the home study issue before the end of the semester, because a lot of people rely on it, and we have to either keep them on our rolls and allow them to continue what they were doing, or we need to move them off into e-school or to other programs. And we'd also have to acknowledge that the education for those people who are sick or who, you know, have a cold or decide to stay home because they're quarantining, and I mean, a little while back we had 5% of our students who were under quarantine. I mean, right now it's only 2.5%, but that's a lot of students, and missing 2 weeks is significant. And what we're going to be saying, if we get rid of the home study option or make it a lot more, put a lot more of the responsibility on the students and their families, is we're going to say, for a lot of those people you're talking about, the disadvantaged students, we're going to be saying, okay, you're not getting pretty much 2 weeks of school or 10 days, however it ends up being. But I think we need to decide on that before the end of the semester, because we can't really decide on adding more hours until that question is solved.
McKay, and then Rebecca.
I guess I'm just confused about what is the timeline. I understand like what we're having discussion, what would this look like, but given our history, our teachers are expecting almost everything that we talk about might happen Monday. So I've not heard a timeline. I don't think this is going to happen Monday, right? I mean,
I don't want this to happen Monday.
No.
The earliest I could see this happening would be third term. Earliest.
Right. So
me.
this is what perhaps the third term looks like, but this is not anything before the Christmas break or anything. This is we're our community. I mean, our teachers read the same headlines we do, where they see accelerating deaths, accelerating symptoms, accelerating everything. You know, everybody knows someone now personally, and so. I understand that we're in the mindset that we have to plan, but I think we have to be conscious that you know, our audience have been used to us making a decision and something changes Monday, and so
there's too much going on. Like, I echo everything that Rebecca has said and Nate has said, and Jennifer. There's just a lot of things. There's a lot of things at play that have to take place before we actually get this to happen.
Great.
But that's why we're having this discussion now, so that we don't just say, oh, by the way, on Monday we're going to do this. That would freak out everybody.
Right.
So,
but that's I feel like, I mean, that's, some of them are freaking out because they believe that's the situation they're in. And so I think if we can assure them that we're talking about, you know, yes, we need to do things. The other thing that we need to, as we need to address, you know, the home study portion, but we need to be supportive of parents of yes. I mean, what the difficulty is we say, oh, they're just staying out of school because I don't know that their mother is in cancer treatment, and I don't get to ask for a doctor note for mom. And all these different circumstances that I know are difficult to deal with, but the other thing that we're going to need to grapple with is actually education is not going to be the same. Not just because we're learning new tools, because people for the rest of these students' time in public school are going to reference this, and they're going to say, "How do we know?" So things like competency-based learning is going to be more important, not just this year, but next year and in 3 years, because they're going to say, well, this student was a COVID student. This student was out for a long time. This endured the pandemic, and this student went behind in first grade. And so for a decade, I mean, education is just not going to be the same anymore. And so we're not going to get back to sort of a normal, even when we say we're normal. And so one part is we're driving, we've got to be conscious of solving our problems without creating huge anxiety. And it feels like over the last week, there's just been so much anxiety. And yes, we wanted to get more face time in our current system and moving to phase 2 with our high school students. Remarkable that we can test all our extracurricular students in 1 or 2 can come back. But I think it's also fair to say that we're recognizing that that we'll move back in the phases sometime before the end of the year as well. Not just moving forward to more face time. I think there's going to be at least one going back before, which is how to gauge that and work through. The home study is very difficult, but we're a disaster because everything's a disaster. It's a disaster situation. Our students are living through a disaster.
It's going to be interesting to see if the governor passes this next step, the amount of quarantines that happen. This could help the load on teachers. I mean, this is all dependent on if it passes or not. We don't know.
Yeah. So the state is beginning to use its data that it's gathered because for all intents and purposes, we've all been learning about how to live in a pandemic. So it's awful that we've done a massive human trial in education with students, but we have, and we're going to use that data to say, let's change some of the quarantine rules. Let's change, what definitions, what does exposure consist of? And so those changes are coming, but not in this semester. If I had one phrase that I'd want to blast on YouTube or on social media, not in this semester, right? Okay.
So I wanted to clarify, I have my calendar in front of me. Term 2 ends on January 15th, correct? And term 3 starts on January 18th. So we're about a little over a month away from term 3. So it seems to sound like we all agree that we need to make some adjustments to home study. Maybe some major adjustments, maybe eliminate it, maybe completely change it. And I feel like that's a decent amount of time for people to plan for. That was what I had in my mind as well, was the term. So Anne Marie, I guess I have some questions for you about home study. We've talked about this before. This has come up before. And in talking to the elementary schools I work with, they've suggested certain ways to get it done. They've talked about having, a few people at the district level who just simply create the content for, certain grades. And if you're out for quarantine or whatnot, you just go to that kind of online platform for the couple weeks that you need it, and then you come back to your classroom. They've also suggested having someone in each school be a curriculum planner. I'm interested to know, from your perspective on the district level, what's feasible, and what kinds of things can we look into?
Yeah, I think that probably if you talk to each principal, they would have some ideas of their own how they could handle it. Some, I think right now could say, I'd assign this teacher to work with the upper grade students, this teacher with lower grade students. They have 8 students in their class. I'm going to, put those students in other classes and do it. There are some who might say, yeah, if we could put them in a packaged program, and that's one suggestion we put out there. There's a product we use. This is for families who are having a very difficult time completing the work and engaging students. It's one platform. It's about an hour and a half a day, and that, that could be assigned as sort of a quasi-home study. So I think there are many ways we could address it, and maybe differently per school, depending on what they're needing and wanting. There are some real differences in schools in terms of the number of students in home study. So I think if you ask superintendent, if you directed us to look at models for eliminating or changing so that individual teachers don't have responsibilities for 2 cohorts, I think we could come up with some solutions for you to consider and get some feedback from our school communities, our teachers. over the next few weeks.
Would that work
Rebecca,
well with the
can I
secondary?
just-
Yeah.
Sorry, would that work well with the secondary level too?
Yeah.
Okay.
And are we certain that are we all certain that we don't like the current home study method? I mean, it does serve an important purpose.
Well,
I'm confident.
some of my concerns, I've talked to teachers, as I say, okay, if we eliminate home study, does that ease your burden? And some of them have said, not really, because I still have the students who are out sick or on quarantine, or, I talked to a high school teacher, they're converting all of their materials to digital anyway for all of their students, and so they still will have a lot of work. Maybe not as much follow-up with home study students, but there's still work there. So I think eliminating some home study would help, but it's not necessarily going to ease everything that they're working on.
Yeah, that's why I think we'd have to look at this really differently. A, elementary versus secondary, but B, school by school, because they do have some operations in place that would make sense. I think every year, as a teacher, it was one of those moments when a student comes up to you and like, we're going to Mexico for 3 weeks. My mom says to get my stuff. And it's 3:05 and I'm like, I can't, we always deal with the challenge of students who are gone for periods of time. As I've talked with teachers in elementary, because it's a different model, in elementary, by and large, I have heard them say, I'm comfortable if I have my own cohort of students who generally will come to school. They may need to take off for a week here. They may need, if they may have symptoms of something, and so they'll stay home cautiously. But if they're the ones who I know will attend school at least half of the time, then I am comfortable being responsible for those students. It's those who have said, the student has a chronic condition, so they are never or seldom there, or the student who is very off, like, they're a week on and then they stay back for 3 weeks. Again, I think we need to think about, we created a program called Home Study while we have a program called eSchool. We have a program that helps teach students at home, and it's built to do that. So I think we've got a tool there that we can, again, think about using differently perhaps. And even if the curricula, the teaching and learning services came via that, and the school had them in a club, so to speak, because that's what lots of families are wanting. They're wanting to keep a connection to their neighborhood school. They love the pumpkin festival, and they love this, and they want to get the t-shirt. Schools have told me they're willing to have, to build a relationship with them in some way while assigning the instruction duties to a different program like we are running through eSchool.
Superintendent, you had a comment?
Yes, for a few days now, the district council members and I have been kicking around some ideas related to how could we respond to the goal of extending instructional time and the impact of any adjustments to home study and those kinds of things. This discussion has taken us pretty much down the very same path that we have been discussing. So what I'm going to suggest is that we will take on the challenge. We needed to hear this discussion tonight. We were also targeting the semester change as possibly being the time that we would implement some type of adjustment. We will bring to the board a plan on this. We'll have to talk through with the board how we will adjust this in terms of timeline, because the challenge on that, of course, is I think our next board meeting is the 12th, and the end of the semester is the 15th. And so that would be a fairly immediate change. So I don't know if we'll have to have a special meeting or we'll have to do something through. I don't know yet how we're going to solve that, but the council is ready to build a plan with the safety committee, input from teachers, and make sure that we can get this resolved. I also want to say, for decades in public education, we have had a program which has been sometimes known as homebound instruction. If a student has lupus, if a student has some a broken leg of some kind and they can't come to the school and they are homebound, the district finds a way to provide an education for those students while they are not at school. That, I believe, needs to be more of the model that we're looking at. For those who have a true medical condition, those are the students who we are obligated to serve in some way. But I will also tell you that we have some overstaffing this year, given the number of students who have left the district. So we may have an opportunity to reshuffle some assignments a little bit to allow individual teachers to be assigned to home studies specifically, and we take that burden off of classroom teachers. I'll also tell you that a couple of months ago when we were talking about this with elementary principals, one of the principals said, well, my teacher just wants to keep her students. She's determined to keep her students. She doesn't want to give them to somebody else. I think we may have to be at the point where we say, nope, we're not going to do that to you. We are going to make sure that we have someone else who can handle this assignment for the period of time that they're out, and then when they come back, they're back in your class. So the goal is to allow us to build a plan based on the conversation that we've had here tonight, and we will do that to bring back sometime in the first part of January. And I'm being a little vague on exact date because I don't have a clue how we're going to do that yet. But we're grateful, very grateful for the conversation tonight. I think this will give us good guidance.
Any last minute questions or comments? Jennifer?
Well, I think something also we need to consider along with this, related to what Rebecca said earlier, is I think we do need to look at our attendance policies. We were starting the year not knowing what things were going to look like. We made it so that you didn't have to show up to school, and I think some students are taking advantage of that, and I think we need to evaluate maybe changing it so that there's more teeth to the policy and that students are going to show up to school or show up to e-school and not just stay home in their pajamas. And I know that not all home study students are doing that, but I'm referring to the ones who are taking advantage and not getting the education that they deserve to have.
We will intend to address that as well.
Thank you for your comments and questions. And Anne Marie, thank you for
I just have one
responding.
more question. Board Member Rash would like me to ask if do we know what percentage of students are on home study currently?
Doug, you got the latest numbers, around 400 total, is that correct?
Yeah, we have approximately, according to our records of what registrars have noted, we have 300 elementary students, 300 secondary students approximately that are in the home study program. I mean,
So
percentage-wise, that's
5%?
pretty low. Yeah, below 5% that are in that service right now.
Okay.
So, but to clarify what we're talking about here tonight, those are kids who are actually enrolled in home study, correct? So there's a difference between the ones that are actually enrolled in home study and the ones who are just out temporarily. Is that correct?
Give or take. Some registrars are using both codes inadvertently, but yeah, particularly those that say, I'm doing this long term, those are the numbers that I'm reporting.
So when we say, so there are kids who are enrolled in home study, but the ones that are temporarily out for quarantine or whatnot, or, the sniffles, we also have to clarify what happens with them as well, because we're actually dealing with two different groups of students here, kind of, when we're saying home study.
A few things might come together for us, Rebecca, particularly the COVID manual that eliminates the need for us when we have mask-to-mask, exposure. The quarantine, which is about 10 to 1, one case of a positive almost equates to 7 to 10 who are in quarantine. You can see significantly that the individuals that have to miss school would decrease significantly if they move forward with that. So therefore, the population that needs that kind of service temporarily might drop quite a bit and be back to the kind of numbers Keith's referring to about just saying this is kind of home hospital or homebound services for individuals who were sick in the past.
Any other questions there with? Okay, thank you, Doug. Let's go ahead and move on. Consent calendar. Just a reminder, the consent calendar you should have had the opportunity to review prior to this meeting. Dealt with the meeting, our board minutes from November. We also had anything dealing with, as you were indicating, Doug, homeschool, school choice, e-school, and then financial reports that were submitted. That will be an agenda action item. And then the Google Calendar. I believe is the next item on the agenda here. As soon as I can get to that right part on my computer here. Just a reminder that on January 5th, Tuesday, from 9:30 to 11 a.m., there's the PTA Executive Board meeting. PTA Presidents and Principals meeting on January 12th, Tuesday, 9:30 to 11 a.m. Study session and board meeting will be on July 12th, Tuesday, or January. I want to get to July. I better get my glasses fixed. Boy.
It's all good. I think we all want to get to July.
Jim?
We don't love to be at July.
USBA conference, so there's like an hour and a half session on January 7th. It's obviously all Zoom, and then January 8th there are 3 sessions you can attend. So a board and superintendent relationship, a social and emotional well-being, which is United Way of Utah County and Everyday Strong folks. So, and for the life of me, the other workshop evades me. I can't think of it, but those are just available, and you can see them. I will tell you that part of the conference is this was the bag year. You're going to get the bag. I'm president of USBA, so the bag is a Kenneth Cole for the ladies. It's a backpack for the gentlemen. And so I can tell you that there are a lot of people that are excited about the bags, but they'll be delivered here to the district office next week for you to pick up. We'll have some materials in them as well.
Will USBA be sending us a reminder?
What's that?
Will USBA send us a reminder?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, McKay, since you're getting delivered to the district, I'm going to get your backpack and give you my chemical.
Really? we can change if you want the backpack too. So.
McKay, thank you for that addition to our Google Calendar. And then finally, January 26th, Tuesday, 7:30 to 9 a.m. will be the board study session. With that, is there a motion to adjourn study session?
So moved.
Moved by board member Nielsen. It's been a long day. Yeah, I've told you this before. I get up at 4:30 every morning, and by the time I get to this point in the day, I don't know whether it's January, July, September, or May. We are adjourned from our study session, and we'll reconvene in approximately 5 to 7 minutes.